welcome to the warehouse. Please stand. We're going to ask the Lord this morning to open up the heavens and worship along with us. For this day, we gather in your name, we're calling out to you. Your glory is like a fire, awakening desire, we'll burn our hearts with you. You're the reason we're here, you're the reason we're singing. Open up the heavens, we want to see you. Open up the floodgates, a mighty river flowing from your hearts and filling every part of our prayer. Your presence in this place, your glory is on our face. We're looking to the sky. You're sitting on the cloud, you're standing with us now. Lord, I'm alright. Your glory, show us your power, show us your glory.
first, a special welcome is lifted up to you. Just pay attention to the announcements that are found in your bulletin. This week coming up, on Wednesday night, we have our trunk or treat, and then after that, we'll be starting the children's program on Wednesday nights. If you want to help with the trunk or treat, we can certainly accommodate you. You can talk to Brenda, Harvey, and we can certainly ask for any help you have. Also, we'll take any candy you want to donate. But again, pay attention to that. We do have some things coming up that we're going to be working on as we go into the holiday seasons. We're going to do another Feed the Need event for the community in November. We're also going to be working on our Giving Tree project again that we've done for the last several years, where we take several families in the community and buy gifts and help them with Christmas. Also, starting in November, we're going to be, for that month as a church, taking up special offerings for Ozzy, who is Katie's nephew, and there's some flyers somewhere up for that. You can pay attention to those. For your offering this morning, when you leave, you can certainly, on the back table, there's buckets, and we use that money for local mission projects. We'll do this, when we do this Feed the Need project, we'll pay for the food and utensils and plates and stuff out of that. Your regular offering to the church or your tithe will go in the basket over there. As we go through the service, if you want coffee or cookies or whatever kind of good stuff Wayne's got over there, feel free to just get up and go help yourself. We're pride ourselves on being a casual service, and so if you want to go get a cookie in the middle of the service, you're not going to hurt anybody's feelings. We certainly want to encourage you to do that. Just pay attention to the rest of your announcements in the bulletin, and also too on your giving, you can give through Venmo, and the address has been up on the screen for a while on that. So we're going to do one more song this morning, and then we'll have our message. can sit down.
When I did the set list, I forgot I was preaching, or I wouldn't have put that song in, because normally after Neil sings that song, I kind of think we need to just go home. So I need next time to remember when I'm planning that I've also put songs that when I'm preaching that we don't do that one. Because again, what are you going to say after that that really makes any kind of significant difference in what we're doing? That's just it's an older song, but that's just a great, great song. That, you know, God is greater than any issue that we're having. And that's kind of what we're going to talk a little bit about today. What we're going to talk about today is, the title is A Fruit-Driven Life. You know, it's one of those things where you could almost preach every sermon this year about what a terrible year it's been, right? I mean, like, if you wrote a script about a year that, you know, we don't want to redo, this is the year, right? We've had, you know, of course, the virus, and then, of course, you know, when you're already struggling with the virus, you throw in 3 or 4 hurricanes and tornadoes, and I know at one time there were like 2 in the Gulf that were bunching together. And, you know, we're having economic problems. There's a lot of people out of work and struggling economically. We're having racial unrest. We're going through a, you know, terribly bitter election right now. And, you know, every event that goes on in 2020 or any other year, you can look at it in one of 2 different ways. Or you can take an event that has a negative and try and find something positive, which is not always easy. You know, if you talk about the virus, you know, you see stuff about the virus, then you also see stuff about, you know, the heroism of the healthcare workers who are dealing with the virus. You see something about a natural disaster or a hurricane, and you see, you know, towns that are hit by the hurricane, and people come together as a town or a community, or you see other communities, you know, donating to them and helping them. You know, with the racial unrest, you know, because of some of that, we're starting to have a lot of conversations in this country we probably should have had a long time ago about race in this country. And, you know, even with the election, one thing that is very positive, I think, is the number of people who are voting. There's been a lot of voter apathy, you know, for several years out. And, you know, you see things on Facebook and pictures of, like, people standing in line for, like, 11 hours to vote. I saw this clip from Florida where these people were, like, standing out in a torrential downpour. I don't know if y'all saw that. You know, and in one way you think that's bad, but it's really good because it shows that people care about our country. And what we're going to look at today is a scripture where this same kind of thing happened, where something happened, and it's all in how you look at it. And where we are is we're in the book of Numbers, which is in the Old Testament. And to set this up, the children of Israel had left Egypt, and they had been wandering through the desert for 40 years. That's a long time. 40 years. And the thing that kept them going, and it's funny, every time, you know, the Israelites get mad at Moses, he always throws this out. Yeah, I know, this is terrible, but God's going to give us a land, y'all heard this, flowing with milk and honey. So just hold on another 35 years or so, and we're going to find the land going with milk and honey. So they finally get on the edge of the land flowing with milk and honey. And Moses decides, before we go barreling in there, we need to send some spies into the land. So he picks 12 people, and one of them's a guy named Joshua, just to throw a name out y'all might know. It's the only one that we should really know. And that's where our scripture starts off today. it says, when Moses sent them to explore the land of Canaan, he said, go up through Negev and on into the hill country, see what the land is like, and whether the people who live there are strong or weak, few or many. And he basically says, here's the kind of stuff I want you to look for. What kind of land do they live on? Is it good or bad? What do the towns look like? Are they unwalled or fortified? How is the soil? Is it fertile or poor? Are there trees or not? And do your best to bring back some fruit. And it was the season of grapes. I don't know if Moses was just a big fan of grapes or not, but he said, by the way, while you're there, grab some grapes. It's kind of like, when you're on the way to the grocery store and your spouse texts you, by the way, while you're there, I need more sweet tea. So that's kind of how Moses is. So they went up and explored the land. And I'm skipping some of the 9, 10 places they went. But we're in verse 23. It says, when they reached the valley of Eshcol, they cut off a branch bearing a single cluster of grapes. 2 of them carried it on a pole, along with pomegranates and figs. Now, this is not the grapes you find at IGA. You think about how big a stem of grapes had to be that it took 2 people to carry them on a pole. Okay? This is not the kind of grapes you're going to find at your regular grocery store. That place was called the Valley of Eshcol because of the cluster of grapes the Israelites cut off there. At the end of 40 days, they returned from exploring the land. There's all kinds of cool numbers in the Bible. This has nothing to do with the sermon, but you think about it. They've been wandering for 40 years, and the spies ran around for 40 days. Why? I don't know if that's a coincidence or not, but that's just how the Bible does work sometimes. So, they came back to Moses and Aaron and the whole Israelite community at Kadesh. There they reported to them and to the whole assembly and showed them the fruit of the land. So they rolled out the giant grapes to everybody. And they gave Moses this account. We went into the land to which you sent us, and it does flow with milk and honey. Here is the fruit. But the people who live there are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. We're going to skip this, verse 30. Then Caleb silenced the people before Moses and said, we should go up and take possession of the land because we can do it. So we bring the fruit. Everybody gets all excited. And they say, oh yeah, by the way, there's some bad dudes guarding the fruit. But then Caleb says, it doesn't matter. We can get it anyway. But the other men who had gone, that's the other 10, said, we can't attack these people. They're stronger than we are. And they spread among the Israelites a bad report about the land they had explored. They said the land we explored devours those living in it, and all the people are of great size. So we have 2 different ways of looking at this. You send out 12 spies, and they come back with 2 things. They come back with fruit, and they come back with a report. Okay, that's the 2 things we're going to focus on. Now, why is it important that they came back with fruit? Because, does anybody have a fruit tree in their yard? Okay. If you have fruit, you have possession of the land. Okay? When I was little, the house we lived in had a pomegranate tree in our yard and a pear tree in the neighbor's yard. Okay? Now, I like the pears better than the pomegranates. Okay? So, if I wanted some pomegranates, I went out to my backyard and grabbed the pomegranates. If I wanted the pears, I had to do one of 2 things. I had to sneak over the fence and grab the pears, or what I normally do is I made my little brother sneak over the fence and grab the pears. Okay? Because when you own the tree, you own the fruit. Okay? When you don't own the tree and you want the fruit, you have to either sneak over there and grab it or get permission. So bringing the fruit back was a big deal because they wanted to show that with the fruit, we can own the land. If we can own the fruit, we can own the land. And often what we do in our life is we receive the fruit and the report at the same time, right? I remember when COVID first started, there was a show I watch in the mornings, a morning news show, and they'd always do like every other show. They'd have the COVID numbers up there, the positive cases, the same, everybody had it. And then at the end of the show, they would always end the show with something like, when COVID first started and a lot of people were hospitalized, when they would leave the hospital, you'd see all these people lined up and clapping, when they left, hey, you beat COVID, and all the nurses would line up. Well, they would always on this show end the show with that. And what they were telling us by doing that is they wanted us to focus on the fruit and not the report, right? Because report, if you say, I want you to do a report on something for school, or your boss comes in and says, I want you to do a report on this. What do they want? They want facts. They want hard facts. They want facts. They want the history about it. But when you want the fruit, what you basically telling somebody is, I want you to pick out all the good stuff. Right? That's what you want. Now, and what we tend to do sometimes is something happens, especially when we're like younger and have to go to our parents and something's happened. We really focus on the fruit then, right? I had a wreck, but I'm alive, Dad. So sometimes we have a tendency to focus on the fruit, but a lot of people, and we all get like this, a lot of times we focus on the report. And what we do is, what we try and do when we're focusing on the report is we do something in America we call coping skills. I deal with a lot of drug abusers in my course, and we make them go to all these classes on drug abuse. But the classes, if you ever go sit through them, the first class maybe they'll go through, cocaine is bad for you, and they'll talk about, it messes up your lungs and heart, and you go through all that. But after the first couple of classes, every other class is focused on how you cope with life other than using drugs. Okay? I had a guy who's in my drug court just this week who had major teeth problems. Now, teeth problems hurt. That's like the worst, some of the worst pain other than kidney stones, if you ever had a kidney stone, which I had last week. But he came in, he said, Judge Waters, I'm going to be hot. My teeth are hurting really bad, and I used meth because the pain was so bad. I said, okay. And so what I told him was, he was scared he was going to jail. I didn't put him in jail. But I said, here's what I want you to do. And I was thinking about this sermon at the time. I need a report from you. And here's what I want to know in the report. What could you have done different? Because think about it. When you, sitting out here, have a problem with your teeth, your first response is not, hey, let me go do some meth. Right? So what we're teaching people is to take, I always tell people, once you get clean, that doesn't stop your problems. Right? Once you get clean, what you're trying to do is learn how to deal with life in a more positive way. Okay? And that's what happens when you have the difference between the fruit and the report. Because if you focus on the negative, what happens is you start to define yourself by the negative. Right? So if you're unemployed, you go from somebody who is looking for a job to somebody who can't find a job. When you're lonely and looking for a relationship, you go from somebody who's looking and actively looking to somebody who's alone. So when you focus on the things in the report and you don't focus on the fruit, you start to identify yourself with the negative. Okay? And that's what's happening in our story. The Israelites are starting to identify with the negative. And there are many times where the negative can turn to the positive, and that's what happens in our story. One of my favorite stories is somebody that was looking for fruit. There was this guy back in the, I can remember the date, in the 20s, who was a sketch artist. And he decided he was going to start a company in Missouri, and he was going to do all these sketches and sell them to Hollywood. Well, basically, Hollywood was not that interested, and he went belly up and broke. And if you read his story, what he started focusing on was the little things. Like, they said, well, we really like your sketches, but we can't do this with them. Or, we really like this, we really like this. So the little things that he was doing that people liked, he reinvented himself and moved to California and used the little things. Like the little, if you look at a whole thing of grapes, you take one grape off. He was looking at the one grapes. And when he added all the one grapes together, he redid his business. And then that mouse he had been drawing back in the 20s hit really big. If y'all are familiar with the particular mouse that I'm talking about, you can go down to Orlando right now and see a bunch of acres of mouse. But Walt Disney focused on the positives in a huge situation of negative. And that's what Moses is wanting the people to do here. Is the positive is there's fruit there, but instead they're focusing on these people called giants. So what do we do? What do we do when we get in a situation where we have a report, which is bad or factual, and we have fruit? How do we, as Christians and followers of Jesus and churchgoers, focus on the fruit? The first thing we can do is we have to develop an appetite for fruit. Okay. I don't know about y'all. I could not make it on this show like Survivor. You know, when they don't, it's not the tent. I mean, I can't do tents either. I'm an inside person. What would get me on these shows starts with an F, the food. After about a day of not eating, my entire focus would be on food. I wouldn't care about the shelter. I wouldn't care about the immunity challenge. I wouldn't care about my team. All I'd worry about is the food. When you're hungry, maybe it's just me. What do y'all focus on? I've got 9 things to do, but I'm hungry. Maybe I'll eat first, and then this other stuff will fall into place. So that's what we have to do. What we have to do in our life is we have to develop an appetite for the fruit and not the report. So focus on the little positives, just like we focus on when we're hungry. Maybe y'all can't relate to this. I'll come up with something else next time. The second thing we have to do is we have to focus on the fruit in our lives right now. We have to focus on the fruit in our lives right now, because it's kind of a glass half empty, half full thing. We're doing a study in our Sunday school class. I can't remember the name of the book now. Oh, here's it. says, the book is called Some Folks Feel the Rain, Others Just Get Wet. And what it's telling us is, when things happen, we can look at it one of 2 ways. We can look at the positive or the negative. One thing that's interesting, if you ever get one of the Bibles that's got the map of the Israelites, that, you know, it shows where they went for 40 years. You know why they went for 40 years? They complained for 40 years. If you look at those maps, and you can follow along in the scripture, every time they were positive, they were liking Moses, they were happy with God, they were heading towards the promised land. And then when they get mad, you know what God would make them do? U-turn. I mean, that 40 years, if you look at it, I mean, it looks like a snake. So what you have to do is you have to learn to recognize the fruit in your life. The third thing you have to do is you have to let others see your fruit. Why do we do that? Number one, it helps us be more positive. Number two, and more important, it encourages other people. If all Christians and all people in relationships let other people see their fruit, it would encourage them and they would encourage you. Right? David Moy uses a thing almost every time he preaches. He weaves it in there where he says, basically, to paraphrase, you're the only Jesus some people see. Right? You're the only Jesus some people see. Because, you go out in the community. Calvin and I talk about this. And they know you go to church and you hold yourself out to be a believer. What are they doing? They're expecting something. Right? They're expecting you to act a certain way. They're expecting you to have a certain attitude. And when you don't have it, you're not projecting that fruit. It doesn't encourage people to project fruit back. So that's the third thing we need to do. The fourth thing we need to do, and this is the toughest one, is we have to be willing to let the fruit grow. You have to be willing to let the fruit grow. If you've ever had a garden, which I can't grow a garden, but what the tendency to do is, the second you see the fruit, what do you want to go do? Pick it. I've been waiting on this fruit forever. Now, it doesn't matter that this isn't ready, or that this is so green, this apple is so green it's going to make me sick. We have no patience, right? We have to be willing to let the fruit grow. There's a parable where Jesus tells the story about a man who had a fig tree, and it had grown for 3 years, and it had not produced any fruit. And his boss man comes up and says, listen, I'm bulldozing this fig. We're going to do something else on this land. And the guy says, please, Mr. Boss Man, let me have 1 more year to try and make it grow. I'll fertilize it more. I'll work harder. And the guy lets him. And the next sentence in the story is, figs were everywhere. So you have to be willing to let your fruit grow. And you have to be willing to be patient. I'm very patient. This is really easy for me. No? Why does anybody know me shaking their head? Come on up, band. Here's the deal. Here's the deal. We're going to be faced every day. Sometimes it's something big, sometimes it's something little. Sometimes it's something at work, a tiny issue that comes up at work. Or it could be something really major, something